This meeting is being recorded.
Wow. Apparently this meeting's being recorded.
For posterity.
Hello, both of you. How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, fine, thank you.
Very good, very good, very good. So I kind of think I also kind of want to start this a little bit. So in a minute, I mean, so Richard is familiar to Eppy Gibbon listeners quite a lot, but Chantelle, you're entirely new. So I guess just to give you a very, very brief bit of context. So this show has been running. It's getting on for 20 years now. And Richard's been sort of one of the regulars. I think he appeared sort of like on the very, very like the fourth show or something like that. So he's been there right since the beginning. And then we've also got Eppy Fest, which has been the sort of the festival associated with the show, and that will be the 11th year next year. And we eventually got Richard along to, after many years, to try and organise that, try and get you to attend that. It's been all complicated, hasn't it? Really, it's just been one thing after another, and then a COVID pandemic as well. So yeah, so it was very, very hard to do. And then last year we started these Chrimbo Limbo gigs. So that was the first time we did that. And so we got Richard and Amy last year. You were involved in the Chrimbo Limbo, the first Chrimbo Limbo event, weren't you, last year? And then we were sort of talking about the fact that Richard was sort of saying that he was doing some other stuff as well. He works with other people, whatever. But he happened to mention that you sort of done a kind of a live sort of live gig, and you were starting to work on stuff or whatever, which got me very interested. And so I guess so that kind of leads quite nicely. I'm giving you all the gumph about where the show comes from, everything else and stuff. But how did you? So what's your background, Chantelle, and how did you sort of start working with Richard?
Yeah. So I'm generally a folk singer, mainly a ballad singer. So I sing those songs that are kind of long stories that you kind of have to keep in your head. And then a couple of years ago, along with two friends, I took on running a Swindon Folk Club. And I think, was it our first year that you came along and you wanted to come and do a gig at the Folk Club with the Bellflowers, which is the trio that I was part of. So we supported Richard and Amy. And I have my harp, and you'd be surprised how many people go, "Ooh, harp!" And and sort of at the end of that gig, Richard was like really interested in maybe having the harp on some of his music that he was starting to put together for his upcoming album.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how that started. And then we really enjoyed working with each other. And realised that we were both into the same sort of thing. So kind of all the narratives of the land and sort of the eeriness that you find. There's a whole term of eerie England, and the concept of there being layers and layers of this eeriness because of the all the stuff that's happened in the country and what that does to the landscape and that sort of thing. And instrumentation and as well as songs. So basically we just thought Richard came up with the idea of just doing something fun as sort of like a practice social music making thing, and we found that we were coming up with some really good stuff, and it pretty much evolved into a show. So that was lots of fun. That was an adventure, but a really, really good one. And then we did we performed beginning of September.
Yeah.
And we had such an amazing response. I think we were enjoying it. We just didn't realise how much other people were going to enjoy what they heard. So we kind of had to do it again. In fact, we were told we had to do it again. Yes. It wasn't really a choice.
Well, that's always when people are sort of begging you for more, that's what you want to hear, isn't it? It's like, thanks for that. Don't want to hear it again, but but when actually people say, yeah, we want to hear more, we want more live gigs and stuff, absolutely. And I think we could all do with a bit more live music at the moment as well, because I think it's been quite a bleak time in one way or another for several years and stuff. And obviously there was a period where we literally couldn't go and see live music at all. And now I think people are really kind of venturing back in again and really appreciating that stuff. Definitely. So I guess that was a really interesting answer. So I guess partly Richard. So obviously you've been sort of doing the sort of solo type work for a few years now.
Yes.
So, and also you've sort of developed this live show, I guess, with Amy, which is kind of like a mixture of certain things. So obviously Chantelle's already suggested it's partly the kind of folk elements and partly the harp and the storytelling and things like that.
Mhm.
But what would you say makes this particular iteration of your work with Chantelle, what makes that different from maybe what would be in a show with Amy?
Well, I think with this, it was kind of seeing what was in our skill sets, really. I wanted to do live stuff that represented the more experimental and improvisational aspect of what I've done with recording. And obviously with the harp, it gives me a chordal background to do some more improvisational guitar. Whereas with Amy, I tend to do the rhythms and the finger picking and things like that, and she takes the leads. So I'm more able to use the harp as a backdrop to that. But I write all the stuff apart from one co-write with Amy. But with this project, we've halved it. So Chantelle's got the music she brings, and I've got the music I bring. So far, I've just been reusing or recycling, I suppose, a better way of putting it, because they're extended arrangement songs that are on previous albums of mine that have not found a live setting, or stuff that I've been working on with Chantelle for the new album. But Chantelle's also got a lot of interest with things like storytelling and a lot of folk myths. And I've obviously got the Gothic background. We've got a lot of common ground that we're able to bring this. I wouldn't say more experimental is not the right way of putting it, but it is a little. It's just very different. It's got that, as Chantelle used the word eerie. It's got that more, the edge that sort of runs through a lot of the Cardo Restra stuff a little bit more, and as much as you're able to do it with the duo, it's always tricky, but we seem to cover a lot of ground with it. So yeah. I think that pretty much sums it.
What's been really nice is some of the songs that I've written that have never found homes in the other, either my solo work or the work that I do on a more kind of folk basis, have found a home in this project, and it's really nice. I mean, I've been so excited about some of the arrangements we've come up with. It's so nice to have something you've created actually find the space that it's meant to be performed in.
So why is it this particular work with Richard has enabled you to sort of develop those songs in ways that you couldn't do in your other projects?
I think it's because they're slightly on the edge of the kind of folk idiom. So I mean, one song that we do is based on the myth of the banshee, but there's so much about building the atmosphere that doesn't really fit in kind of a classic folk sort of arrangement, whereas with the experimental stuff that Richard was talking about, and the kind of trying to push the boundaries of how sound does storytelling, that's really what allowed the song to kind of come into its own. And I don't think that in a different arena it would have kind of coalesced in that way. So they've really grown. It's like my babies have really grown.
Because it's interesting, isn't it? It's how the sort of alchemical process of working with different people can spark ideas off, or as you say, create certain atmospheres that under certain situations wouldn't work. So it's kind of interesting how how two people can work with completely different people and then find new ideas or new kind of ways of expression and stuff, which is a fascinating part of creativity anyway, isn't it? Really, it's one of those kind of really interesting sort of things about why certain musical directions come from working with certain people, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Richard and I were talking about earlier on, which was something that kind of interested me, which is partly why I was quite excited to get you on at the Chrimbo Limbo event, is this kind of thing that I certainly grew up with, but it's been around for hundreds of years. I mean, it certainly goes back to Victorian times, but probably long before that as well, which is the idea of the sort of Christmas ghost story. Which is, from around about this time till obviously Christmas, you get to that point, obviously, where the nights are just getting darker and darker and longer and longer and stuff. And I think probably people just would have spent a lot of time just chatting and sitting around campfires or whatever, talking about the supernatural or that eerie stuff, or as whatever you kind of said. So I thought that idea, that kind of tradition at Christmas, just kind of fit really, really well with the kind of Chrimbo Limbo idea. So do you want to say a little bit more about how the kind of storytelling will kind of come up in the show?
Do you want?
Well, you've got Chantelle. Are we doing Rhiannon?
Yes, we are going to do Rhiannon.
Yeah, well, I'll let you explain
okay.
that.
No. Oh, okay. So I do actually, as part of the performance, I do. I think it's about like a 10-minute, literally story. So oral storytelling, which I've always loved. I've loved since I was 13. The first time I saw an adult tell adult stories as opposed to little children's stories at a party. And so I tell the story of Rhiannon, which is part of the Mabinogion, and she's a fairy maiden, and it's very eerie again because it all happens at night, and there's mist and fog and all sorts of otherworldly things, and it's nice to bring that kind of bardic art of telling a story, but then have it enhanced by sound and music. And I mean, what Richard does with bringing out the vibe and the mood of the story, and kind of so on the ball with in time with what I'm saying, it really the music and the words work so well together, but in a different way from the way the words and music work in a song. Yeah. And so I think that whole kind of getting together, as you say, it's that time of the year where it's really dark and cold, and you come together and you tell stories and in candlelight or firelight to kind of chase away the scary, eerie darkness. And the fact that you kind of that's part of the performance is really nice, and hopefully will be enhanced by it being at the time of the year that Chrimbo Limbo is going to be at.
Sounds ideal. Ideal. Yeah, absolutely. So what sort of so I know you talked about your vocals and stuff, so are you both going to be singing, and do you like harmonize and that kind of stuff and everything? And I guess also kind of, as you said a little bit more, Richard, about the way the harp specifically works with the guitar and stuff. So can you say a little bit more about how musically and vocally you're working together?
Yes, the harp is used in lots of chordal arpeggio kind of ways. There's I guess we both sing. Chantelle takes a lot of the leads. I do a few of the leads from my stuff, and we do some harmony work as well. It's all interspersed within quite long instrumental sections or spoken word sections, and I would say probably about 60% is composed, 40% is improvised, or at least has a sort of a skeleton to then improvise around. And it's just atmosphere and narrative is top of the list, really. Yeah.
I think that's where it's different to just kind of performing songs, isn't it? It's that creation of mood and atmosphere.
Yes.
And kind of taking the time to build it as well, as opposed to like, this must be a 3-minute song. It's like, it's all a bit elastic, isn't it? The amount of time that we spend on these things.
Yeah. No hurry to get things going. Whatever that means.
Yeah, and I guess just because you just, as you mentioned, Richard, is that you kind of said earlier on that there will be a few things that you've not been able to do live before. Mm-hmm. Those from either your solo albums or from Carta Estra, or is there anything that you can with any particular songs that that long-term fans will be able to go, I've been waiting to hear that performed live?
I suppose two specific ones. If from Arcana, there was a very short kind of instrumental piece of music called Wheel of Fortune, which had a little vocal part, and it was only a couple of minutes long, but now we've expanded it into quite a large atmospheric piece. In other instances, there's a short tune from Cabal of a Thousand Souls called The Watchmaker, which is just a little 2-minute tune, and Chantelle adds harmonies to the original song that I've done. So there are little songs, there are little oases in the desert of improvisation. So I think with something like this, we were quite careful that we paced it nicely. I didn't want it to be some huge, great, sprawling improvisation. there is structure to all of it, to a degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. So yeah, and I guess the other thing I wanted to sort of talk about was, I guess, so obviously, I mean, again, Richard, I remember for years now, you've spoken about your love of sort of Gothic stuff and Hammer horror and all that kind of stuff, or whatever, that kind of thing, whatever. But you said, Chantelle, there's kind of like overlap in sort of what you're doing. So in terms of that, so what are you drawing on sort of like English myths, English ghost stories, or is there kind of stuff from other mythologies involved as well, or?
So it's not. So I mean, for example, I mentioned the Banshee, which is she's an Irish fairy who sings a wailing song when so I think it's one of the old houses of Ireland when their head person dies, and that feels very Gothic. It's kind of always the imagery is this woman with wild hair in a tearing storm, rags all over her, and so that sort of that feeds into the Gothic, and there's, I'm not sure if are we going to introduce Witchwood to this one? Yeah. Okay. So
why not?
Yeah,
we are now.
Yeah. But another one of my songs, Witchwood, which never really found a home, was it's based on a book that's very Gothic. It's a book called Witchwood, which is sort of police murder mystery with an Anglo-Saxon kind of ghost spirit thing. So it's that Gothic and that eerie, unsettling nature that you find in a lot of not just English but kind of British, in a lot of the mythology in the British Isles. So it's been that sort of building on that, and I think it works really well with the Gothic that you love as well. And we talk a lot about kind of strange, surreal stuff.
Yeah. There's such a crossover with all of this, anything that's kind of myths and legend and fictional stuff. I mean, I've always been attracted to this kind of material from a young age, mainly because I think I love the imagery as such a visual thing. I decided I wanted, an album about tarot. I'd never done any tarot readings before I did the album, and I just did that as part of doing the album. But I've loved the artwork since I don't know when. So on the card, so a lot of it it just comes together like that, really.
And I mean, there's stuff like a lot of the old ballads, the kind of what are called child ballads. They were at least one collection was illustrated by Arthur Rackham, who is just does the most amazing artwork, but it's got that dark edge to it that again is a bit, it draws on that darker area nature of myth and legend. So yeah, I think that the artwork as well is very kind of, it all feeds in, which is fun.
Very cool. So the other thing I guess I was going to, because this is the bit where, feel free to mention it if you like, but occasionally when we do these interviews and stuff, because I think often people assume that my show and Eppy Fest and everything is all about prog rock and stuff, and it isn't. It's much more kind of like immersive, much more varying, I think, in terms of that it draws on things like folk and classical and jazz and ambient music and all kinds of different styles and things like that and stuff. So I guess, is there anybody specifically, Chantelle, that you do kind of like inspires you musically, that interests you particularly, either whether or not fits in with the style we're talking about now, or whether just any kind of particular musical heroes that you have that you aspire to, or feel have had an important part to play on your musical style?
Yeah, I mean, from the folk world, I really like Lady Masery. Their harmonies are just wonderful, and again, they kind of, there are darker elements to their songs. June Tabor is just amazing. She's got this, as a female singer with a lower voice. It's sometimes you you don't feel like you fit in. And to hear someone like June Tabor, who does have a lower voice, sing beautiful ballads, again, it's that storytelling element that really is really, really inspiring. I think I just Liege and Leaf, Fairport Convention, the stuff that they do, again, it's that traditional songs, but then taking it and doing something really different with it, and kind of a slightly more rocky edge. It is that I quite like genres being smushed together, and seeing what comes out of them. So I love lots of instrumental stuff. There's a band called the Treacherous Orchestra, or that I think they've disbanded now, but they were they would an amazing 12-piece folk instrumental band, and it's that but it's the energy. I love the energy that they created, and the sounds with the different instruments that hopefully that feeds in a little bit with the sounds that we like creating, the way that my folk sounds. So yeah, I think that the thing is that the folk world itself is so broad. There's so many things that you listen one week to the next, and you're like, oh wow, I'm really inspired by that. But yeah, it's ballad singers. The ballad singers I really love. The fact they carried the stories, and it is like. I said yesterday, it's a bit like carrying a virus, but it's not. It's it's like carrying a gift, and you pass it in a viral way.
A virus.
Yes, but yeah, you pass it on and on and on, and there's that sense of it being carried on, and then putting your own spin on it as well, which is, I've just started rambling, haven't I?
I was just thinking that was going to be pitched. You didn't get what you wanted for Christmas. No. Come to Chrimbo Limbo and get that virus you've always dreamed of.
That's right.
The eerie virus. No, don't. We'll be virus free.
But I do, but I did that thing about genres being smushed together, as you put it. I think actually that's very much what the show is about, really. That thing about sort of the way in which music joins in weird places and stuff, and actually the overlap between musical styles is, for me, is as important as genres themselves. I actually quite like the way genres kind of leak into each other. I think that's a really fascinating area for sort of cross pollination of ideas and stuff, which is great. So that's fantastic. So if you were kind of going to encourage people in I'm not going to tell you how many words, but if you were going to try and encourage people to come to this show, sort of what would you kind of, how would you kind of, sort of narrow it down to sort of, so you can both have a shot at this, what would you say? Get people out on the 28th of December to come to Cheltenham. What would you say to do it, to kind of persuade them to come along?
No, you go first. You go first.
Come along and see this hopefully expansive, gothic, weird folk evening of tales and the macabre.
Not quite sure I can top that.
I think I used half of your phrases, to be fair.
That's the problem with letting him go first.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with letting him go first was if he steals your ideas and then
true. Yeah, come to the smush.
Come to the smush.
And I'm guessing you haven't. So most of the stuff you've done, Chantelle, has been in Swindon, I'm guessing, or Swindon, around Swindon. Is that?
I've been performing in various sort of outfits for about 12 years, so I have been sort of all over the place, but with the stuff that I'm doing at the moment, it's kind of the projects I'm involved at the moment are generally new. So so it'll be nice. I don't think I've done a gig in Cheltenham, so I think Stroud's probably the closest I've been.
Cool. So I guess so Richard, how would you describe Smokey Joe's, which is our venue? Because it's quite a quirky little place, isn't it? I
love coming to Smokey Joe's. I've been obviously there on the stage and in the audience, and you get a great diner. So which is it's interesting because you've got the American diner feel, and then it gets to the stage and it starts becoming a slight surrealist party, doesn't it? Something. It's there's lots of decorations and things, and it's quite a small intimate-ish venue, but it's, acoustically, I mean, the sound's always been really good, and it's just a really lovely evening. Very much looking forward to it.
Excellent. So some of the stuff you're going to be doing live, that's going to be appearing on another solo album, is that right, Richard?
Yes.
Which is going to be one of your solo albums, but it's also going to feature Chantelle as well, is that right?
That's right, yeah. The new album I've got coming out in January, but it will be around in December, I suppose. It's called The Forked Road, and it is a little bit of it's kind of a concept album, really, which has got a very much a folk horror type theme running through it. It goes back from the idea that we're all stardust, and some of the songs that I've done with Amy, plus instrumental pieces that I've done with some sound recording from Avebury, and Chantelle's been especially involved with a couple of pieces that are based on a comet arriving to Earth and creating the undead on the Ridgeway. So it's got quite a local feel, but there's a kind of a nice my made up history. I've called it the first and last books of English magic, bookending it as well. So it's the sort of thing that I wouldn't try and describe in too much detail, but I think if you followed it and sort of immersed yourself into it, you would get an idea of a beginning and a middle and an end on it.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, we might have a track or two of that on the show as well.
Yeah,
so it might be, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming up as well, separately from this, that's coming out anytime soon?
Not at the moment. I do have a couple of albums on Bandcamp. So the first one, The Gates of Elfinland, came out in 2017, and that's sort of like all the magical ballads out there. So kind of dragons, ghosts, several fairies, that sort of thing. And then I released one that's just purely single vocal that I did during the pandemic on my very, very old and rubbish laptop, so I couldn't do layering or anything. And that's called Bonefire, and that's all kind of Halloween. It was released around about Halloween 2020, and it's all the ghostly death songs, of which there are many in folk. So I had to cut it down. But things like what are called revenant songs, so ghosts coming back to their loved ones, and stuff like that. Crows, all that sort of fun, happy stuff for Halloween. Cool. But yeah, I'm hoping to work on a new album next year of folk songs. So watch this space.
Fantastic. So we'll hopefully look to have some of those on the show as well at some point as well. That'd be great. That's great. Well, I think we've kind of pretty much discussed all the key topics, haven't we? The most important bits and stuff like that. So yes, but this has been lovely. Is there anything else either you wanted to chip in with before we round out?
There's nothing for me. I suppose it's worth. Chantelle's got another project called the Ivy Green.
Yes,
that she's just started, and I'll let you.
So the Ivy Green is very folk. So it's with me and another musician called Jessie Thompson. And there is in the early 20th century there was a folk song collector called Alfred Williams, and he went around the Upper Thames Valley collecting the words to all these folk songs. And so we're going to record 10 songs, going to the places where associated with the people he collected them from, learning a bit about those people and doing our own arrangements and stuff. So we're doing that. We're releasing a video a month on YouTube to do that, along with a little bit of the history of the song. So we've got one coming out at the end of this month, which will be our third song. So,
wow,
it's great. It's great. Check out YouTube. It's good. We'll do. So we look forward to. So hopefully the next time we meet, which will be just over a month's time, I guess, we'll be all in the same space in Cheltenham at Smokey Joe's, which will be great. Yeah, very exciting. Excellent. So yes, just if people remember that the tickets are available from Ticket Tailor, and they're only £6, includes a booking fee.
just £6. So yeah. So I'm not charging enough for you two. Am I low the price?
You can reevaluate that after the night.
That's true. Yeah. So that sounds great. So yeah, very much looking forward to it. And thank you so much for being involved in the interview tonight. It's been great.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolute pleasure. Really nice to see you both.